Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're grabbing a stack of sources, fresh off the press, really digging into the fascinating world of big tech. Our focus, Apple's huge announcements from their Worldwide Developers Conference back in June 2025. We're talking specifically about the new iOS 26 and macOS Tahoe 26.
Right.
This intriguing new design language they're calling liquid glass, and their major formal push into generative AI. They've named it Apple Intelligence.
That was definitely the main event, laying out Apple's software roadmap for the next year or so.
Yeah.
But, as the articles we've looked at make really clear, the story didn't stop there.
No.
Almost immediately after Apple pulled back the curtain on these updates, their longtime rival, Samsung, well, they jumped onto social media. They basically tweeted variations of, hey, that looks familiar.
Oh, classic Samsung. Always ready with a comment. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack exactly what Apple announced. That's step one. Then we need to investigate the substance behind Samsung's claims. I mean, is there really that much familiarity in the design and AI features? Or is it just, competitive noise?
Good question.
We'll explore the long history of this rivalry, too, see how analysts and actual users reacted to both the announcements and the jabs.
Right. The whole ecosystem reaction.
And finally, try to understand the bigger strategic game that's being played out between these two giants.
Because this competitive back and forth, this constant push and pull we see between them, it really does shape the technology you end up using every single day.
Absolutely. So let's unpack what Apple actually unveiled first.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's dive into what Apple showed off at WWDC 2025. Reports detail a pretty major software roadmap refresh. And right off the bat, the big visual revamp seems centered on this thing Apple calls liquid glass.
Right. This is presented as a new design language.
Mm-hmm.
And it's intended for, across the board, iOS 26, macOS Tahoe 26, CarPlay, maybe more. Yeah. It's described as being translucent and adaptable.
Adaptable.
Well, clearly taking inspiration from the shifting information you see in things like the iPhone's dynamic island, that kind of fluid interface element.
Okay, so the core idea seems to be that controls shrink when you don't need them, really focusing your attention on the main content on your screen.
Exactly.
We saw examples mentioned in the materials like see-through camera and flashlight buttons on the iPhone lock screen, translucent messages and notifications, and these sort of adaptable rectangles for in-app controls.
And on macOS Tahoe 26, the menu bar apparently becomes completely transparent. Apple's suggesting this makes the display feel larger. App icons are also getting updates, light and dark appearances, new tints, a clearer look, plus more folder customization options too. Apple's stated goal here is to make interfaces more personal and expressive than ever.
But, and this is where the immediate user feedbacks have to come in. Initial reactions weren't uniformly positive, were they?
No, not at all. Reports indicate that right away there were concerns about readability.
Readability.
Yeah, and visual clutter with this new design.
Yeah.
It seems the transparency, maybe too much of it, might not be working for everyone straight away.
Okay, that's a crucial point to track.
Yeah.
Beyond the look, though, there are tons of new features rolled out across the operating systems, right?
Oh, yeah. Think of it as a refresh of core app experiences, but also adding new utility. In iOS 26, for instance, the phone app is getting a major overhaul.
A phone app, okay.
Becoming more of a unified hub. You can pin favorites, recents, and voicemails are all consolidated.
Yeah.
And it adds AI-powered voicemail summaries.
Ah, finally.
Automatic unknown number screening, and this feature called Hold Assist.
Hold Assist. What's that?
It apparently monitors hold music and tells you when a real person is back on the line.
Okay, Hold Assist sounds genuinely useful. That could actually solve a common frustration for a lot of people.
Right. We'll see how well it works.
iOS 26 lock and home screens are also getting more dynamic wallpapers and a reimagined Music Now playing experience.
And the camera app interface is streamlined, almost bare, they said, with modes and settings accessed just by swiping.
Simplified, maybe?
FaceTime gets a redesigned landing page, emphasizing contact posters and personalized video messages. And the Messages app adds chat backgrounds, polls.
Polls in Messages.
Yeah, and apparently Apple Intelligence can even suggest options for those polls. Plus direct Apple Cash payments and typing indicators in group chats.
Okay, some catch-up features there, too. And they introduced that novel emoji creation tool.
Oh, right. You can mix two existing emojis or combine emojis with text descriptions to make new ones. Kind of fun.
A bit gimmicky, maybe, but fun. Plus, CarPlay Ultra was shown off for select cars, promising customizable layouts and built-in vehicle controls.
Right. Then moving to the desktop side with macOS Tahoe 26, Continuity is enhanced significantly. The phone app actually arrives on the Mac.
Really? On the Mac?
Yeah, letting you relay calls, access recents, favorites, voicemails, call screening, and that hold assist feature, all directly from your computer.
That's pretty integrated.
And live activities from a nearby iPhone now appear right there in the Mac menu bar.
And Spotlight. They called it the biggest update ever.
Yeah, pitched as a central command hub now. It lists all search results ranked by relevance, adds new filters, and can even pull documents from third-party cloud drives, like Google Drive or Dropbox.
Okay, that's useful.
Critically, you can take, they said, hundreds of actions directly from Spotlight.
Actions like what?
Using app intents, meaning it can trigger tasks within your apps, run shortcuts. They're introducing quick keys for super fast access to common functions. It even learns your routines for personalized actions.
Sounds powerful. Ambitious.
And personalization on macOS Tahoe also gets a boost in enlivened icons, tints, customizable folder colors with symbols or emojis, personalized wallpapers and themes. So yeah, a broad refresh covering visuals, core apps, and system utilities.
Okay, so that's the core design and feature refresh for the operating systems themselves. And then comes the really big headline, Apple Intelligence. Apple's formal, broad move into generative AI across its systems.
Yes, this is the key new pillar. And Apple put a huge emphasis here on privacy.
That's always their angle.
Much of the processing for Apple Intelligence is intended to happen right there on your device, on device. But for more complex tasks, they introduced something called private cloud compute.
Private cloud compute.
Which is designed to process data in a way that's supposed to be secure without permanent storage on Apple's servers. That's the claim.
That privacy angle is definitely a major differentiator. They're pushing hard. What are the key AI features we actually see under this Apple Intelligence umbrella?
Well, reports mention an expansion of visual intelligence, so you can scan screenshots for info or actions. And they even integrated the ability to ask ChatGPT questions about the content on your screen for more complex queries.
Interesting partnership there.
The AI-powered voicemail summaries, call screening, and hold assist we talked about earlier, those are also powered by Apple Intelligence.
Got it. And live translation.
Yeah, integrated into phone and video calls and messaging. It appears as live captioning in FaceTime, powered by those on-device models for privacy.
On-device translation, that's significant for privacy.
For Apple Watch, they announced a workout buddy, providing AI fitness inspiration and pep talks.
A workout AI coach. Okay.
On macOS Tahoe, shortcuts get intelligent actions, integrating Apple Intelligence for things like writing tools and image creation. And you have options for processing on-device via that private cloud compute, or integration with ChatGPT for the really complex stuff, giving you access to its broader knowledge base when needed.
So flexibility in how the AI works.
Seems so. Spotlight also leverages AI for tasks like running tagline shortcuts on documents or accessing clipboard history.
They also introduced spatial scenes.
Right, using machine learning to give photos a simulated depth effect on iPhone and letting you sort of step inside apps like Zillow with Unveiled.
Ah, connecting to Vision Pro.
And Vision Pro also benefits with sharper spatial persona avatars, apparently.
Now, a crucial caveat the sources highlight, and this sounds really important.
Yeah.
Access to Apple Intelligence is strictly limited, isn't it?
It is. To newer, higher-end devices. Specifically, the reports mention the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, the upcoming iPhone 16 line, and Macs and iPads with M-series chips.
So not your average iPhone 15 or older models?
Nope. This is a significantly narrower rollout compared to how some competitors have made their AI features available more broadly.
Right. And reports also note Apple is shifting to a unified naming convention, calling all the fall 2025 OS releases version 26.
Just simplifying things, I guess.
So that's the landscape Apple laid out at WWDC. A new look, core feature updates, and their formal big AI push with Apple Intelligence.
And quite a list of changes. So that's what Apple unveiled. What happened next?
Okay, so Apple finishes their keynote, lays all that out. Our sources show Samsung's response was, well, almost immediate.
Not surprising.
Primarily via social media, and it was pretty pointed, directly questioning the originality of Apple's announcements. The core theme was simple. These new Apple features look familiar.
They weren't subtle about it at all, were they? Let's break down the substance behind some of Samsung's specific claims, maybe starting with the design jab.
Okay.
Samsung tweeted something like, customizable apps, floating bars, that sleek glass UI, looks familiar, Saf.
Okay, so what's the substance there? Is it just talk?
Well, looking at the articles, Samsung's One UI does have a long history of extensive customization, going back years.
True, Android in general, but One UI specifically.
Exactly. We're talking widgets, icons, themes, layouts, features like floating app windows, they call it pop-up view, and edged panels for quick access have been staples on Galaxy devices for a long time. Specific mentions of One UI 7 reports detail, customizable app and widget style, a reimagined home screen, and the app's edge panel for quick AI access. So they have points of comparison.
And that sleek glass UI jab, that's aimed squarely at Apple's liquid glass, right?
Directly.
Mm-hmm.
And reports point out comparisons not just to other Android interfaces, but even older UIs. Like, remember Microsoft's Aero Glass theme in Windows Vista and 7?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that glassy look.
Samsung's One UI 7 uses blur effects with transparency for clarity, especially in their quick panel, which has actually been praised for its organization in some reviews.
And this design jab seems to land partly because, as we mentioned earlier, Apple's liquid glass did face that immediate criticism about potential usability issues.
Exactly.
Specifically, concerns about readability and clutter were voiced by users and commentators right away. Comparisons were made, for instance, between the new iOS 26 Control Center and the One UI 7 Quick Panel, with feedback suggesting One UI 7 felt more organized, maybe easier to navigate, while iOS 26's really extensive transparency might be sacrificing readability for style.
And Samsung's familiarity claim also serves as that subtle reminder that UI trends are often cyclical. Comparing liquid glass to old Windows Aero implies Apple might be late to a trend others explored and maybe refined years ago. Samsung implicitly suggests that its One UI offers a more mature balance of aesthetics and practicality today.
Okay, so that's the design angle of their response. Then Samsung went after the AI announcements pretty hard too.
Oh yeah, they tweeted things like, AI is coming to your watch, cute. Ours already knows when you're too tired to care, hashtag Galaxy AI.
Oh,
And another one, new to live translations, welcome aboard. We've been translating text and speech in real time for a while now, hashtag Galaxy AI.
So what Samsung is highlighting here is basically their existing Galaxy AI suite, right?
Exactly. The sources list Galaxy AI features already available on their devices, live translate for calls and in-person conversations, writing assist, note assist, circle to search, various AI photo editing tools. And Samsung also made a point of saying Galaxy AI features are free on supported devices until the end of 2025. A little hint there, maybe.
A hint about future costs, perhaps. But the effectiveness of these taunts seems to come from pointing not just to feature parity, but to availability and maturity. As we noted, Apple Intelligence is this new suite limited to the latest, highest-tier devices.
Whereas Galaxy AI is already integrated and accessible in a broader range of recent Samsung phones and watches, that's their counterpoint.
Availability now versus later, and on more devices.
Exactly. The new to live translations jab lands because Samsung's Live Translate is an established Galaxy AI feature that's been out there. Apple's introduction in this specific comparison looks like catching up, and the smartwatch jab leverages existing Galaxy Watch AI capabilities that Samsung had been promoting.
So this narrative of Apple being late to certain AI features, it could potentially pressure up.
It could, or as you mentioned, Apple might just double down on its privacy-first strategy as the key differentiator, arguing their implementation is better or safer. But commentators did note that this persistent mockery, combined with what some analysts called laughable device support restrictions for Apple Intelligence.
Laughable. Strong word.
Yeah. It could potentially hurt Apple's brand perception, especially in the AI space where they're usually seen or want to be seen as a leader.
Okay. So to really assess the substance here, beyond the social media snark,
We need to compare features properly.
let's go feature by feature and see who's genuinely ahead where based on the sources.
Right.
Let's start with UI and customization again. We've got Apple's system-wide liquid glass, high transparency.
Versus Samsung's use of blur effects with transparency, particularly in its quick panel. And as reports indicated, those readability concerns about Apple's implementation popped up right away.
And in terms of raw customization options,
Apple's definitely opening up more than they used to, that's clear. But One UI has historically offered much more extensive control over themes, widgets, icons, layouts.
it still feels like a difference in philosophy, maybe. Apple's curated experience versus Samsung's emphasis on user choice.
I think so. Samsung's customizable apps, JAB, directly targets this difference.
Yeah.
And looking at comparisons like the iOS Control Center versus the One UI Quick Panel, these different philosophies are still pretty evident in their design choices today.
Okay, now let's shift to AI. This is the big battleground right now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Live translation. Apple's is brand new.
Samsung's is established for calls and conversations. That was definitely a gap Apple was filling with this update.
What about writing tools? Summarization, grammar, that sort of thing?
Both platforms offer rewrite, grammar check, and summarization features now, but Apple Intelligence is noted in the analysis for its potential flexibility, allowing more free-form instructions. And crucially, its deep ChatGPT integration for complex tasks, which could give it an edge in system-wide contextual understanding, depending on how it works in practice.
And Samsung has its Writing Assist and Chat Assist, which have been around a bit longer.
Right.
Image editing and generation, though. That seems like an area where the analysis suggests Samsung might have a real lead right now.
Yeah, the sources suggest Samsung has a significant lead here currently. Apple's cleanup object removal tool is described as pretty basic, sometimes leaving artifacts, and reports didn't mention background generation capabilities.
Yeah.
Image Playground is their new generative tool, but it sounds like it's in its early stages.
Okay. And Samsung.
In contrast, Samsung's Galaxy AI offers more comprehensive editing things like better object removal, sound removal with audio erasure, generative fill capabilities, style transfer, and drawing assist to create images from sketches or text prompts. Commentators noted in the article suggest Apple significantly lags behind Samsung here in terms of feature maturity and raw capability at this moment.
That's a clear difference then. What about on-device versus cloud processing for AI? That seems like a core part of Apple's pitch.
It really is. Apple strongly emphasizes on-device processing for privacy. That's the default. And they have private cloud compute for more complex tasks designed specifically so data isn't stored permanently on Apple servers. This is highlighted again and again as a key differentiator.
And Samsung's approach?
Samsung uses more of a mix. Newer chips enable some on-device AI, yes, but the reports don't suggest the same, almost exclusive focus on that specific privacy angle as Apple appears to be taking with Apple Intelligence.
Got it. And device support, we touched on this, but it's worth repeating because it seems major.
It's a huge difference right now. Apple Intelligence is limited to only the newest, highest-tier devices. iPhone 15 Pro, upcoming 16s, M-series Maxi Pads,
while Galaxy AI
is available on a broader range of recent Samsung devices, including some mid-range models, older flagships, and their watches. That broad accessibility is a clear advantage for Samsung in terms of reach today.
So it's definitely a nuanced picture when you look closely, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Apple might be later to market on some specific AI features that Samsung already has. That seems fair based on the comparison.
Yes.
But Apple's strategy seems focused on deep ecosystem integration, that strong emphasis on privacy via on-device and private cloud compute.
And potentially a more polished, even if initially smaller, set of offerings integrated across their specific hardware lineup.
The Apple Intelligence name itself kind of suggests a focus on practical utility and seamless integration, maybe?
Could be. Their writing tools in particular are praised in early looks for flexibility, and that privacy focus is a clear strategic choice they are betting heavily on.
And a critical future point the articles touch on is monetization. How will this AI stuff be paid for?
Exactly. Samsung explicitly stated Galaxy AI is free on supported devices until the end of 2025.
That "until" is doing a lot of work there.
It really is, hinting strongly at potential subscriptions for advanced features down the line. Analysts predict both Apple and Samsung might introduce paid tiers for premium AI capabilities, maybe in the $10-20 a month range, or bundle it with existing services like Apple One or whatever Samsung might offer.
So how they handle that transition, balancing free essential AI with compelling paid features while keeping privacy front and center, that could actually be more important long-term than who launched which specific feature first.
Absolutely. That monetization strategy and how users react to it could be the real story in a year or two.
Now, Samsung's recent jabs, the Looks Familiar campaign, it's not happening in a vacuum, right? This is part of a really long, often dramatic rivalry between these two tech giants.
Oh, decades long. It really started with Samsung being a critical component supplier for Apple products, supplying screens, chips, memory.
Right, they were partners in a way.
Partners and suppliers, yes. But that evolved over time into intense direct competition in the smartphone market. And this led to those massive high-profile patent lawsuits that really kicked off around 2011.
I remember those. Apple sued Samsung, accusing them of basically copying their intellectual property, just wholesale copying.
Pretty much. This included design patents covering things like the iPhone's home button, the rounded corners, the grid of icons, and utility patents for software features like bounce-back scrolling and tap-to-zoom. The complaints were extensive, detailing many alleged instances.
And Samsung didn't just take it, did they?
No, Samsung usually countersued, often over mobile communications patents. They held essential patents for 3G, 4G technology. By 2012, reports noted they were locked in over 50 lawsuits globally, claiming billions in damages on both sides.
Billions.
A U.S. jury initially found Samsung willfully infringed Apple's patents and trade dress, awarding Apple over $1 billion. Though that number shifted significantly later through appeals and retrials, it got very messy.
But those legal battles really helped solidify Apple's copycat narrative about Samsung in the public mind for years, didn't they?
It absolutely did. That narrative stuck for a long time.
So that history of intense litigation, all those accusations of copying, it provides crucial context for Samsung's current social media tactic.
Exactly. These jabs about familiar features are, in a way, a continuation of that competitive pattern. But the battleground has clearly shifted from the courtroom primarily to public opinion, fought out on social media and in marketing.
And here's the interesting paradox the sources highlighted. This intense, often bitter rivalry marked by these claims and counterclaims of copying.
It seems to have actually driven significant innovation and feature convergence across both platforms.
Right, by constantly watching and reacting to each other, maybe even, borrowing ideas.
They've pushed each other to develop more feature-rich devices at a rapid pace. Some commentators called it revolving feature stealing.
Revolving feature stealing.
And the outcome, ultimately, it benefits you, the consumer, by leading to a wider array of advanced capabilities becoming standard on both sides.
Beyond the lawsuits, there's the marketing warfare itself. Samsung has a long history of using provocative, sometimes pretty humorous ad campaigns that directly target Apple and its users.
Oh, yeah. They've been quite cheeky, as some put it, for over a decade. Openly parodying Apple products, the queues outside Apple stores, Apple's culture, sometimes explicitly designed to counter positive Apple sentiment around a product launch. Their outdoor marketing is also noted as being bold, not shying away from these direct jabs.
Apple's marketing, in contrast, is generally much more reserved, isn't it?
Much more. They might have subtle digs in keynotes, perhaps a pointed comparison here or there, but they usually avoid aggressive social media confrontations like Samsung engages in. Apple focuses its marketing on product elegance, simplicity, the integrated experience, often with those minimalist visuals.
So Samsung's aggressive social media trolling, like we saw after WWDC this year, it's a calculated strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It appeals directly to specific groups. Android loyalists, people who see Apple as restrictive or maybe slow to adopt certain trends. It generates significant buzz and online engagement. By being cheeky, Samsung creates an us versus them narrative that seems to resonate globally and helps its brand stand out from the crowd.
And the engagement metrics, the clicks, the shares, those are often a key goal, maybe regardless of potentially alienating some Apple loyalists.
That seems to be the calculation, yes. Get people talking.
So after Apple's big unveil and Samsung's rapid fire looks familiar, what did people actually think? How were the announcements and the response received by analysts and users on the ground?
Well, industry analysts had varied reactions, as you might expect. As we touched on, some found Apple's announcements, particularly the pace of AI integration compared to competitors like Samsung, maybe a bit underwhelming.
Underwhelming.
Or at least felt Apple was playing catch-up in certain specific areas, like some of those AI features we discussed.
And the liquid glass design.
That definitely drew criticism pretty widely for those potential usability issues, readability, and clutter being the main complaints.
And did analysts acknowledge Samsung's points?
There was widespread acknowledgement among commentators and in reports that, yes, many of the AI features Apple is now introducing have indeed been available on Samsung's Galaxy AI platform for some time already. That point landed.
And public and social media reactions, predictably messy.
Oh, yeah. Incredibly varied and often falling along existing brand loyalties. It fueled those typical fanboy debates we all see online constantly.
Of course.
Discussions on platforms like Reddit showed really strong opinions on liquid glass. Some hated it, calling it impractical or just plain ugly. Others saw potential, maybe needed refinement. And interestingly, many Samsung users specifically commented, hoping their phones wouldn't adopt similar, highly transparent design cues.
So concerns about usability were crossing brand lines.
It seems so. Originality and usability of the new interfaces were huge topics being debated everywhere.
What about the broader tech community, beyond the diehard fans?
They often view these competitive jabs and the resulting convergence of features pretty pragmatically, based on the sources. There's a recognition that in a mature market like smartphones, Companies inevitably draw inspiration from each other because, well, there are only so many ways to reinvent the wheel, as the saying goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's interesting, as you pointed out, that the specific usability concerns about Apple's liquid glass design readability, visual complexity, seem to transcend typical fan biases.
Right. These concerns were coming from various sources, various perspectives, which suggests these might be genuine design challenges for Apple to address, not just competitive noise generated by Samsung's campaign.
And finally, Samsung's trolling itself, even if it looks like just snark.
The analysis describes it as a remarkably effective marketing tactic.
How so?
It successfully injects Samsung and its products right into the middle of the massive global conversation happening around Apple's event. Apple events get huge attention. This gets Samsung's significant free media coverage and captures consumer attention because suddenly articles and discussions everywhere end up dissecting Samsung's reaction right alongside Apple's actual announcements.
So Samsung's tweets effectively become news items themselves.
Exactly, amplifying their message far beyond their own social media accounts, regardless of whether every single claim is perfectly, factually watertight down to the last detail. It gets their name and their counter-narrative out there.
These back-and-forth exchanges, then, they aren't just entertainment, are they? They have deeper strategic meanings that go beyond the banter.
Oh, absolutely. They impact market position, brand perception, and the ongoing story of tech innovation itself.
How so, strategically?
Well, Samsung's jabs are clearly an attempt to position themselves as an innovator, or at least an early adopter, specifically trying to make Apple look like a follower, especially in the absolutely critical area of AI right now.
Which directly challenges Apple's long-held image as the design and innovation leader.
Precisely. As AI becomes more central to the user experience on our devices, perceived leadership in this field is paramount for brand image and ultimately sales.
In this current battle, it really highlights different strategic approaches, doesn't it?
It does. Samsung is being aggressive, trying to solidify its AI frontrunner image with early, broad rollouts and consistent branding like #GalaxyAI. Apple, meanwhile, seems to be playing a longer game, betting on its integrated ecosystem, that strong privacy focus, and maybe the refined quality of Apple Intelligence to win user trust, even if some features arrive later than competitors.
And the contrasting device support reinforces this.
Totally. Samsung's broader availability versus Apple's limited, high-end focus for AI features really underlines these different strategies for market penetration and value proposition.
And the analysis suggests that if Samsung's familiarity argument gains serious traction, if it really sticks,
it could potentially start to weaken the justification for Apple's premium pricing. That's a huge potential impact.
how?
Well, part of why Apple commands higher prices is that perception of superior design, a uniquely refined user experience, and cutting-edge innovation. If key features and design elements start looking too similar to those on high-end Android phones like Samsung's, as Samsung alleges, and as some observers noted with liquid glass and certain AI features, Apple's unique value proposition could diminish.
Making it harder to maintain that significant price gap over the competition.
Potentially, yes, especially if the performance of features are seen as comparable.
And in this mature smartphone market, what even counts as innovation anymore is changing, isn't it?
It really is. Is it about being first to market with a feature, or having the best, most polished implementation? Or is it about integrating features most seamlessly into the overall user experience within a specific ecosystem?
Feature convergence, where platforms start looking more alike, clearly impacts public perception of who is innovating.
And both companies contribute to these trends by observing and, frankly, inspiring each other, to use a polite term.
So true innovation might be less about entirely new individual features these days.
And maybe more about the holistic integration, the overall usability, and the ecosystem benefits those features provide when put together.
Which is an area Apple has historically excelled in.
Exactly. And they aim to continue that with the deep integration promised for Apple Intelligence. So while Samsung might be first to market with some specific AI capabilities, Apple's strategy is often to refine those ideas and embed them deeply for what they hope is a more impactful experience within its large, very loyal user base.
And this whole AI race, it mirrors past tech battles, doesn't it? Like the browser wars or the search engine wars.
Absolutely. History shows that an early feature lead doesn't guarantee long-term dominance. Better execution, superior user experience, and building a strong, sticky ecosystem often win out in the long run.
So Samsung's current lead in specific AI areas is noted as significant now.
But Apple's huge user base, their control over both hardware and software, and that powerful brand loyalty are massive assets for their long-term AI strategy. They have time and resources to play the long game.
Okay, so wrapping it all up then, Samsung's social media offensive against Apple's big WWDC announcements. It's really a mix of things, isn't it?
It is. There's some substantive critique woven in there, yes. But it's also clearly a calculated marketing strategy. And it definitely includes that characteristic industry snark we've kind of come to expect from this rivalry.
And Samsung's core familiarity argument. It does seem to have some validity when you dig into the details.
It does. On the design side, Apple's liquid glass is visually distinct, sure. But concepts like transparency and highly customizable UIs have definitely been explored before across Android, within One UI itself, and even in older operating systems like Windows Aero.
And crucially, that initial feedback on liquid glass, highlighting genuine concerns about readability and clutter, that does lend some weight to the idea that Apple's implementation might not have the optimal balance yet, maybe compared to more mature UIs like OneUI 7, as some commentators pointed out.
Right. And on AI, Apple is clearly later to market with some specific generative AI features like live translation and the more advanced image editing capabilities that Samsung already has integrated into Galaxy AI. So Samsung's claim of being ahead of the curve in these specific areas seems to hold merit based on the timeline. However, Apple Intelligence does bring unique strengths based on the reports we've seen. Its deep privacy focus via on-device processing and private cloud compute is a major one. Potentially more flexible and context-aware writing tools, thanks partly to that ChatGPT integration, and the promise of deep integration across the entire Apple ecosystem. Those are Apple's counterarguments.
So Samsung's jabs serve multiple purposes. They're part competitive entertainment, part brand building for Samsung as an innovator and challenger.
And sometimes they contain genuine critique of Apple's choices or timing.
And whether iOS 26 and macOS Tahoe 26 are truly significant leaps forward, or maybe more incremental updates that leave room for this kind of criticism, that's still up for debate, really.
Consumers will ultimately decide that over time, based on their real-world use and whether these new features actually improve their experience.
The Apple-Samsung rivalry is definitely evolving, though, now fiercely contested in the AI arena.
And Samsung's taunts are potent because they manage to combine substantive points about Apple playing catch-up or facing design challenges with being an undeniably strategic marketing move. They capitalize on perceived weaknesses to boost Samsung's own brand and insert themselves directly into the narrative around Apple's launch.
So while the snark grabs the immediate attention,
it's the underlying strategic shifts in AI development, in design philosophy, and that looming question of AI feature monetization that will likely have longer-lasting implications for both companies and really for the industry as a whole.
Okay. So what did we dive into today? A lot, actually. The immediate aftermath of Apple's big software reveal for iOS 26 and macOS Tahoe 26, focusing on their new liquid glass design and the big debut of Apple Intelligence.
We saw how Samsung quickly responded with their looks familiar critique, comparing Apple's new design aesthetics and AI features like live translation and smartwatch AI to capabilities already present in their own One UI and Galaxy AI platforms.
We traced the long history of this intense rivalry, didn't we? From those huge courtroom battles over patents and designs to today's social media skirmishes.
And how this competition, while sometimes appearing as just simple copying or revolving feature stealing, actually seems to drive both companies to innovate faster and converge on features, ultimately giving you more advanced tech in your pocket or on your desk.
And we considered the strategic implications from Samsung's attempt to challenge Apple's innovation image, especially in the crucial AI space,
to the potential impact on Apple's premium pricing strategy if key features and designs truly are perceived to converge too much.
All right, here's a thought to leave you with as we wrap up. As artificial intelligence becomes more and more deeply embedded in our phones, our computers, our watches, who will earn your trust in this space? Will it be the company that pushes aggressively to be first to market with a wide range of new features, getting them out there quickly? Or will it be the one that perhaps moves a bit slower, emphasizing careful implementation, user privacy above all, and that seamless integration across everything you own?
First versus careful. Speed versus privacy.
Keep that question in mind the next time you see a splashy tech announcement from either of these giants, or anyone else for that matter.